Mhm. Hello, students. Today I'll be starting with the new subject, Advanced Auditing, that is MCOM, same three subject. So we'll start with chapter number one, Essay 230, Audit Documentation. Uh, Introduction. The Auditing and Assurance Board under the Council of ICAI, that is Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, has formulated a few standards. Okay, it has also given accounting standards, if you remember. Now, these standards on auditing are in line with the international standards issued by the International Auditing and Assurance Board, IAASB. Okay, these standards are applicable worldwide. Okay, even in India, it is applicable. The purpose of these standards is to ensure that the information or the testimony is given by the financial statements, the data which is provided by the companies, is of high quality and it is acceptable worldwide. Okay, now we go to meaning. Auditing standards constitute the uh, a yardstick, we can say, against the quality of the audit work which is done by the auditor. The auditing standards are set of guidelines that can help the auditors to perform the audit work. Okay, uh, with respect to financial records, audit standards provide the basis for how an auditor prepares, conducts, and reports the results of the audit. The audit standards ensure that these are accurate, consistent, and they can be verified. Go to next slide. Now, introduction to AS 230. Standard on Auditing 230 deals with auditor's responsibility to prepare audit documentation required during the course of conducting the audit of any financial statement of a company. Audit documentation refers to working papers prepared and obtained by the auditors. Okay, he doesn't have to only prepare those. Sometimes he may collect it from the management and he will file those documents properly. uh, he has to preserve those documents as they will be acting as a proof or evidence that the audit was done in proper ways. We'll go to next slide. Now, what are the main objectives of this SA 230 audit documentation? First, adequate documentation of audit work is done because many times that later on some fraud is unearthed, then the auditor should have a proper proof with him that he had done his work properly and adhered to all the rules. Okay, so this documentation will act as a proof in court of law. A second thing, it facilitates audit quality and accountability. If you have proper documentation, then you can expect a good quality of audit, isn't it? Support the auditor's opinion. See, auditor can give opinion in various ways, like He can issue a clear report, uh, or a qualified report. Even adverse report is given sometimes. Then what is the justification of his opinion? For that, again, he needs to collect evidences. Okay. So this standard on auditing is very important for any auditor. Now let us see what are the additional objectives of this standard. Now this documentation will help the auditor in future audits of the same company, or even in case of similar audits of other companies. Now this documentation ensure that the legal and regulatory compliances are done on time. Okay. Many times government requires you to file a few returns, file documents with ROC and all. Okay. So if you have followed these guidelines given by SA 230, it will make sure that you have fulfilled all the guidelines issued by the government. Apart from this, this documentation strengthens the internal quality control. Okay. And it helps to create a goodwill in the minds of shareholders. Now, definition of audit documentation. Audit documentation is nothing but a record of audit procedures performed by the auditor. Okay, where he collects relevant audit evidences during the conduct of audit, during the process of audit. Okay, see, at the end he has to give his opinion or audit report. So he has to follow procedure so that he doesn't miss out on any important part. So this audit documentation helps him in that to obtain proper evidences that he has covered everything. These documentation we also call them working papers. Okay. Now purpose of this documentation, as we already discussed, it supports or acts a proof and helps him to draw conclusion from what he has observed during the audit process. It also enables effective reviews and compliance checks. Importance of AC 230 audit documentation. Uh, if you have done documentation properly, it will ensure that transparency is there and he can be made accountable in audits. He can pinpoint a few people whom he think maybe that they are accountable for this portion. Okay, if you don't have proper documents, you cannot pinpoint your finger to anyone else. Then it facilitates effective reviews and quality control, strengthens confidence in financial reporting of the company. Requirements of ASA 230. Okay, it will cover in 2-3 slides. So first slide on that. ASA 230, that is documentation, helps us to prepare timely reports. Okay, reports are prepared promptly. Okay, and they are accurate and reliable. When it comes to form, the form is prescribed in the Companies Act, which the auditor has to follow. Okay. Uh, Clear records of procedures, evidences, and judgments are being accumulated by the auditor. Okay. And the extent of documentation will depend on the size of the company or its turnover, we can say. Okay. How many products it is dealing in and risk associated with that company. So everything will govern the extent to which documentation is done. We'll continue. Matters arising after balance sheet date. See, the audit report is done after auditing, which may end up in around September, October. So sometimes after 31st March, after the year end, there may be some events which may take place. And in some cases, the auditor has to report such cases. Okay. So if normal operations will be done over the that period, but if any special event occurs, then in that case, the auditor has to collect evidence and report that event in his current auditor's report. Okay. So that will be matters arising after balance sheet date. Departure from relevant requirements. Sometimes for reasons you may differ from the relevant requirements of SA 230. Okay. If it is done so, then we have proper documentation. Okay. At the end, the auditor has to make a final audit file. Okay. This is done only if he could complete his work of documentation on time within specified time. Retention period. The retention period means for how long you will preserve those records. It may be 7 years or 8 years. In India, mostly it's 8 years. Okay. So for this much long time, they have to hold that record. Post completion changes. Once audit is worked, the changes are not allowed. But in case of some justifiable reasons, it may be allowed. So we can conclude that SA 230 emphasizes more on accuracy, timeliness of reports, and comprehensive documentation. Okay, this documentation plays a key role in supporting the audit process and compliances. This documentation is essential for audit reliability so that the shareholders, the stakeholders, other stakeholders have trust in the company. Now, one more important part which is there in this chapter is checklist. Okay, when you go for marketing, you already prepare the checklist or a list of items, I would say. Okay, so that itself becomes our checklist. Okay, so here in auditing, now let us see what is definition of checklist. A systematic tool used to ensure all audit steps and documentation requirements are completed. That all stages are being completed, all legal documents which are to be collected are collected. Okay, all the formalities are completed. Okay, this is made sure by the SA 230 audit documentation. Now let us see purpose of this checklist. Why we need to make this checklist? To ensure consistency. Suppose we have a checklist for all the service providers. Okay, say for example, all transport companies, then we'll have a common checklist for all. Okay, whether the appointment letter is received, whether books are ready, okay, whether all the trial balance are complete. Okay, so we will have checklist. SA 230 says that a checklist should be prepared. Okay, why? Because it ensures consistency, that we are consistent, that we are checking these points for over a number of years. Okay, facilitating compliances. Compliances means complying with the rules and regulations set by the government. So if you follow SA 230, you are ought to sure, you have to make ensure adherence means following to the auditing standards. Okay, when you have a set of rules which are followed over the years, then it will enhance your efficiency. Okay, the audit staff will be more efficient, and as a result, the quality of work will be improved. Now, where do we use this checklist? Uh, at the planning stage itself, we use this checklist. Once we have a checklist, then we appoint a capable person who is able to cover that work or do that work. Okay. We also do the risk assessment at this planning stage, and accordingly, a qualified person is being appointed at that stage. Then we have execution stage, means when the audit process actually takes place, maybe at uh, client's office or maybe at the auditor's office itself. Okay, so this is also important. This also plays a vital part where the audit uh, process had taken place. Reporting stage, that is conclusion part. Okay, this checklist will make sure that everything is executed and everything is being put on the paper and all the documentations are done, so that when we are making a report, nothing is left. Okay, left out. Advantages of checklist: reduces oversight risk, so that once you have a checklist, you don't forget anything, isn't it? You'll tick mark the item once it is covered. So it makes sure that you don't uh, overlook any item. Promotes accountability. Okay, suppose you have many audit assistants or colleagues. Okay, you can hold someone accountable if you have a checklist and that person's name is written against a specific item. So he becomes accountable for that work or part of that work. The review of work becomes easy if we have a checklist. Okay, the auditor, or if there are more than one auditor, then they can review the work which is assigned to them. This checklist acts as a uh, supporting training. If you have any junior person in your team, then this checklist can help him to understand, to learn the audit process in easy way. Helps documentation. If you have checklist, then we can say that it's ought to collect all the documents which are enlisted in that checklist. Now, sometimes you may be asked how you will develop a checklist. Okay, so very first thing is you have proper objectives of your audit. Okay, first define, identify the objectives why you're doing this audit. Okay, understand the audit requirements. SA 230 asks you to properly document all the evidences. Okay, and these requirements can be client specific depending on the nature of business. Okay, and turnover, etc. Okay, segment the audit process. If you have checklist, then you can divide the work into different stages or parts, and you can allocate the work to proper person. Then step 4, identify the key tasks for each stage. Since we have already divided the work, division of labor is very easy or becomes easy. We can identify which are the most important tasks, and we can assign that work to a specific person or a qualified, well qualified person. Use clear and concise language when you make checklist. Okay, and then it should not be vague or confusing. Okay, it should be clear and concise, in short. Okay, so that the subordinate understand what they are asked for. Step 6, format for practical use. After the work is assigned, you can make a proper format, okay, for use in actual process of auditing. Then step 7, test and revise. Once the checklist is given to the assistants or associates, then they can go and do audit process. If any loopholes are found, if any item is missing, then it can be revised later on. This is example of uh, checklist. First item, has the company obtained a letter of engagement? Okay. Then from whom it is to be taken, audit manager, on what date it is collected, completed or not, any remarks. So likewise, we'll cover all the items which are there in the audit process. Okay. Now we'll go through a few case studies. Let us read this. Mr. Ram is a partner in Ram and Company, Chartered Accountants. He has completed the audit of Vishal Limited and filed audit working uh, papers, not partners. It should be papers properly. SEBI, Securities and Exchange Board of India, requested the audit firm to provide access to audit working papers. State the responsibility of auditor to provide access to his working papers. Now, this is very important. The ICAI has a code of conduct for its members. Normally, all the professional bodies have ethical statements. Okay, they have to accept those ethical values. Okay, like one of them, the most important ethic is not to disclose any data which they have come across while conducting the audit. Okay, but there are few exceptions, like when government asks for some data. Okay, okay, in that case, with the due permission from the company, they have to, okay, they have to provide data to the government bodies. SEBI is one of the government bodies, and with due permission from the owners, they have to provide data to SEBI. Is this clear? This is part of professional work. Okay. The auditor is not sharing the data to any other person or any competitor. So it is a responsibility of auditor to discuss with the client and give access to the working papers to SEBI. Okay. We'll go to next one. Mr. Kapse, a practicing chartered accountant, has been appointed as an auditor of Fortune Limited. You being the senior auditor, Mr. Kapse consulted you about the factors influencing the amount of working papers required to be maintained. Advice. Okay. Mm. So Mr. Kapse is being appointed as a auditor in Fortune Limited. First of all, I would suggest, means I'm talking on behalf of senior auditor, that he has to first make sure that he's being appointed, get the appointment letter, okay, and then study the nature of business. Uh, Also have a look at the internal control system, which is operational in Fortune Limited, whether it is operating, it is commensurate to the level of business. Okay, then for documentation, I would suggest that first he makes Mr. Kapse makes a audit program. Okay, and he, according to the assistance available with him, he can plan the audit program accordingly that everybody is busy. Okay, then apart from this, uh, uh, one has to make sure that whether the given audit is, since it's a limited company, it is definitely a statutory audit. So Mr. Kapse should make sure that all the aspects are being covered in audit program. Okay, so whatever you have already studied in auditing at TY level or SY level, all the processes, all the procedures are too complicated, are to be complied with. Okay, and Mr. Kapse should keep in mind the due dates of all the returns to be filed. That will be my advice. Next, Mr. Dhirendra, Chartered Accountant, is a partner in Dhirendra and Associates. While auditing the accounts, the auditor noticed that Audity Lucky Limited has provided rupees 5 lakhs for doubtful debts in the books of accounts. The auditor has challenged this and gave his opinion that the provision should be rupees 9 lakhs. After a lot of deliberations and considerations, both the auditor and the client concluded a provision of rupees 7 lakhs. The auditor did not document the deliberations. He believes that there is no need to keep a record once he is satisfied. Do you think the auditor is right as per SA 230? That is audit documentation. Okay. Now, in this case, Mr. Dhirendra, uh, who is partner in that CA firm, okay, and he has noticed that RDD, reserve for doubtful debts, is created for 5 lakhs, and he suggests that it should be enhanced to 9 lakhs rupees, and somehow they have made a provision of 7 lakh rupees. The most important thing is that suppose this is his first year of audit, then this will be too much for asking, because the owner, they have more first-hand information about RDD, the possible losses due to bad debts. So their judgment, the director's judgment, is very important. And if you are challenging them to enhance their doubtful provision to almost double, that is 9 lakh rupees, then this is very important that we properly document it. Okay, because you are not see, although this may not have a effect on taxation, because in any case the reserve for doubtful debts is not allowed as a deduction in expenses. So this is just a RDD, okay, which is not on a judgmental basis. But even if the auditor has an influence on any of the items in PNL, okay, then proper documentation should be made about all the changes or deliberations which are made as per his suggestions. Okay, so as per AC 230, he has to maintain complete record. Next, Mr. Sanjay, a chartered accountant, a partner of Sanjay Associates, was appointed as a auditor of Ajanta Limited for the year 23-24. During the course of audit, he had discussion with the management of Ajanta Limited on very significant matters. Auditor thought that this discussion did not affect his opinion. Hence, he did not document the discussion. Uh, do you agree with the auditor? Okay. Now again, Mr. Sanjay is a partner in Sanjay Associates. Okay. Uh, Again, he's been consulting with the management. During the course of audit, he had discussion with the management. Okay. On very significant matters. Clear? So as per SA 230, the auditor should, or rather must, document all the discussions which he had made with the management. Okay. And since it is mentioned in the question itself that on significant matters, then it becomes mandatory for the auditor to document those matters. Okay. And if he feels that it is not necessary to document this, then I would say uh, he is wrong on that part. He should document this discussion as it pertains to significant matters. Okay. So now, students, you must have got idea about what uh, audit documentation is all about. Okay. Now let us go to case study 5. Messrs. HN Company Chartered Accountants has undertaken the audit of your company, Reliable Limited. Okay. The audit team has the habit of leaving the audit working papers on the table at the uh, end of the day. What will be the consequences of such a practice? Give your opinion as part of as per SA 230. Well, this is very casual approach by the auditor, which is absolutely wrong and not correct. If the working papers lie on the table itself and in your client's office, then he may take custody of it and he may not disclose that he has it. Okay, they have it. They will claim that they are lost by auditor, and they can sue the auditor for his negligence of not maintaining proper documentation. So it's completely wrong on the part of auditor that he is so negligible and casual in his approach. So he should take care of it and should not repeat it again. Okay, in case of next clients. Okay. So let us go to next one. Well, obviously, this practice is not. This will have a adverse consequences as they have asked in the question. Let's go to next one. Mr. Vikas, a chartered accountant, was appointed as a statutory auditor for of Excel Limited for the year ended 31st March 24. During the audit, it was found that the auditor failed to document a significant audit procedure performed during the audit. Okay, examine the impact of the audit. See again, it is mentioned that the auditor uh, failed to document a significant audit procedure. Now again, the company, okay, if it's not satisfied, if the company is not satisfied with the audit work, okay, they will propose to change the auditor in next AGM. Okay, and they can sue. If the shareholders come to know about this, they can sue the auditor because this is negligence on the part of the chartered accountant. Okay, and if this is done that he has not documented, then it will be a failure on his part, the auditor's part. Okay, then while making report, even he'll make a blunder. Okay, if this is done on regular basis, then he'll be um, judged guilty in the court of law. Okay, if he could not uh, produce the evidences of his work performed. Okay, so students, these were 6 cases which we discussed. Okay, so only this much is there in chapter number 1, standards on auditing, essay 230. So I'll stop my lecture here. If you have any doubts, you can WhatsApp me. Okay, thank you so much.